Neal, how frustrated were you with the game being postponed on Tuesday night?
Yeah, like us all, we want to play games. We've done all our prep, we've named the team, we was ready to go. So yeah, frustrating. And then, because of the timing of the game being called off, we missed that day's training as well, and the whole week has to be restructured. And obviously, I feel for Dorking because I know Mark quite well, and he'd been sort of messaging me and texting me over the weekend going into Monday about the game, and we kept asking the stadium, what's your view, and they kept saying no, it'll be fine, the frost sheets are on. So I'm not an expert, so I gave the feedback back to Dorking that we said the frost sheets are on and it should be fine, there should be no problems. I took it upon myself on about sort of 11:30 on 11 o'clock, whatever time it was on Tuesday, to come here myself with my boots. Went running out with my boots on and just go and have a look at the pitch as they were bringing the sheets off, and that was it was rock hard. And I knew then. I rang Mark and said, "Look, pull over. Ref will be here in 10 minutes," but can't see it.
Does football, because I don't want to play the blame game, does football need to do more about postponing games? I know it's very difficult at times.
It's difficult. You have to look at, frost sheets are meant to, Chesterfield, I presume, had frost sheets on as well, and they got their game on. A lot of others didn't. Depends on the place and the temperature. So we discussed, after the Dorking game, we discussed this weekend's game and said, what do we need to do for this weekend's game? Now, for me, if we call a pitch inspection on Friday, now, the game won't be played because the temperature hasn't warmed up. I look at the temperature all the time for training and different reasons, and today it doesn't go below freezing, it says, and tomorrow it says by sort of 12, 1 o'clock it's going to be 6 degrees. I want to play the game, so if I put the ball back in your court and go, what would you do? Would you make a call on Friday so that no one travelled and you solve all the problems, or would you give the game every chance of being played? For me, I'd rather give the game till 12 o'clock, whatever time it is tomorrow, to give it the best chance of thawing out. Now, if it doesn't, I'm not an expert. Well, who's going to turn around and say, oh, you got it wrong, Neil? Well, yeah, maybe I got it wrong, but I'll try to give the game every chance. I don't know. What would you do?
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? That's what I'm saying. I know even the Scarborough game on Tuesday night, on an artificial surface, they put the kick-off back half an hour to 8:15 just to ensure it was going to be on, because it was so cold they didn't know if the game was going to be on. Yeah. And that seems crazy, again, being in doubt 15 minutes before kick-off.
Yeah, so it's not easy, and you always have to, there's the opposition, there's their travel, their expenses, there's the crowd, the fans, the crowd. You've got to think of everything, and it's a really difficult scenario. I mean, I'm not in charge of whether the game's on and off, and I'm not in charge of whether our pitch will thaw out. I'm sure if you spoke to Fylde and said, look, should we give this every chance to be on? I'd like to think both parties would say yeah. If we wanted to make the call, if they said no, we don't want to travel, make the call at 3 o'clock on Friday, then I would say, given the fact it's not quite warmed up enough yet, it's not going to have any chance.
Are you confident then that tomorrow's game will be on? What sort of information have people given you? What do experts say? I don't know. How long does it take to throw?
There's loads of different things. I think the frost sheets had been on quite a bit last weekend going into the game. I think you can only have frost sheets on for a certain amount of time. So once the game got called off, I believe that the frost sheets may have had to have come off the pitch at some point, because otherwise it kills the pitch. The only thing we can hope for now is nature, which is that the weather's, if what they say is right, and it does get to 4, 5, 6 o'clock, 4, 5, 6 degrees by 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, then you'd like to think it will start to come out, and by 3 o'clock we should be good to go. But again, I haven't got a crystal ball, and I can only go by what the temperature says. All I can say is, from my point of view, I want to give the game as long as possible, whilst respecting the fans. If I was a fan, I would try and plan my journey to make sure I wasn't as far into it as I might have been.
And I know you're not an expert, so probably direct this towards the wrong person, but are there any sort of areas of the pitch that will take longer to thaw out? Has anyone spoken to you because you've got the cinema and what have you, and if they're in the shade?
Possibly, but I don't think it's a case of whether the sun gets on the pitch. I think it's a case of generally the temperature rising. So if the temperature all around York goes to the 5, 6 degrees that it's supposed to by 12, 1 o'clock tomorrow, then surely the natural thaw will start. So again, I don't know, I'm not an expert. All I know is, from my point of view, I'd like to give it as long as I can, because I want to play the game. I hope Fylde do, and at the same time respecting the clubs, the fans, and any decision we make. I think the problem with the Dorking game was we were told it was fine. I relayed that back to Mark White that it was fine, and that was what I was told. I wasn't allowed on the pitch. I couldn't get on the pitch, so I couldn't see it myself. The frost sheets were down. It will be fine. And then when I walked on there at 11 o'clock on Tuesday morning, it wasn't fine. So the first thing I did was pick up the phone to Mark.
Final one then. If it's touch and go when the referee comes for his inspection at lunchtime tomorrow, do the managers have a say at all, or is it entirely down to the referees, or can he say, look, I think it's just about playable, are you happy to play? Do you get a say?
Yeah, we've had them conversations before. It's actually quite funny. When I was at Notts County, I travelled, or it might have been Solihull, I travelled to Fylde 3 times for games which got called off the first 2 times when we was there at the ground for different reasons. One was waterlogged and one was an unsafe area on the pitch. So, and there was a debate going on there whether we thought the second time round the game could go ahead, and all parties ended up agreeing that it couldn't. So yeah, it does happen. Obviously, the safety of the players has got to be the most paramount thing. We're in the lap of the gods a little bit, but certainly if we were to say, right, well, we don't want to mess anyone around, let's make a call at 3 o'clock on Friday afternoon, the chances are you're not going to get a positive answer at the moment.
Okay. Let's assume the game's going to go ahead then. Anything different team-wise, squad-wise from what we spoke about the other day?
Well, we're playing a different team. That bit I do know. Obviously, you've seen 1 or 2 players have gone out on loan. But other than that, the hard part's been, you fire the boys up, you try and bring them to a crescendo every time a game's coming around, you really nail everything. So you do it on Tuesday and you go in and game's off, and then you have to kind of sort of reset and go again ready for a different set and a different test and different qualities and different shapes. So that's the only challenge for me, but hopefully the boys are sort of know what they're going to do and we get the performance.
In your team selection, has that changed because you've got different opposition?
It can. I mean, it hasn't from where I was going to go, but there has been a slight tweak to what we're doing because of maybe playing against a different shape, different qualities of the opposition. So, we take opposition, we kind of go, right, this is where we think we can be strong, this is where we think they're very strong and we need to be mindful of, and Fylde don't play exactly the same way as Dorking, so you need to adjust certain things for that.
And you must be pleased to have got the 2 players out, to get Kevin Joshua out, to get Quevin Casser out. As you mentioned, for one thing, it gives you less bodies you have to get into 11-11 on the training field. Yeah,
it's not just that. It's not. I don't look at it as cold-hearted as that, if that makes sense. I don't like having unhappy players. That I've been there. I've been a player, and when you're not playing on a Saturday and you've got nothing to look forward to, it can be demotivating. And then you're joining in training, and I'm expecting high levels, and you can be a bit flat, and that's difficult. So when Dice came to see me about he wanted to go and play, and it wasn't one where I was desperate to say, no, I need you out, I'm trying to bring in money or anything like that. It was, look, I've got an unhappy player who's desperate to go and play games. I've got to look at where am I leaving myself short, can I cover that? And that's the sort of thing. And it's the same, with Kevin Joshua, his family are in Ireland, he's living away from his family. So it's not as simple as getting a loan move. He's in accommodation up here. Any loan move has to give him accommodation if it's not near York, so it's difficult. So in the end, he naturally wasn't happy. His career, he's a young lad, he wants to get playing, so that's where that came about. And very, very similar with Kevin, and obviously I think he's from that way, so it helps him being closer to his family and playing football, and hopefully getting a smile on his face and enjoying it and showing what he can do.
And Kevin's got a club now in Ireland as well, so hopefully that works out for him.
Yeah.
It's left you a little bit light in midfield, the 2 players that have gone out, Quevin and Dice. Are you only nearer to get anybody else into your squad, whether it's midfield or anywhere else now?
I'm not saying we're any closer, but because 1 or 2 players that we like, that we think might be a good prospect going forward, now's probably not the time to be trying to strike with them. It's probably better to leave it later in the window and see how things materialise. So, we are, like I said before, there's that willingness and want to sort of improve, but at the same time there is a long-term plan here, and it's not like we've got to get the next 2 or 3 weeks right. We've got to get the next 2 or 3 years right. So we're very. It's not like we're trying and having knockbacks. We're kind of sitting, going, well, we like this and we like this, but now's not the time to move on this. Let's let the next week or so unfold in certain positions before we move. You know, when it comes to whether it's a left back we're looking for, you know, sometimes again is it the right quality? Is the right quality available at the moment? So yes, I get it. You know, Dice has gone out, Castro's gone out, blah blah. You know, I wouldn't leave myself short to the point where I'm going, I've got no centre midfielders. You know, obviously if we had an injury glut, then we may be in that problem. But I do feel we've got some ways of dealing with the midfield area should we need to, whilst we're looking at still trying to improve.
And the players that you are looking at, do they know that you're looking at them? Because if they don't sign straight away, that also gives them a chance to have a think about it. Because the player might be a brilliant player, but they've also got to be happy once they get here to get the most out of them.
That's called tapping up. No, if they know that you're in for them, then you're sort of tapping up. So probably no, you know, and there's a lot of things have to happen to make it work. But I think the most important thing from my point of view and the fans' point of view is that there is a process and a plan that is important, that has to be right. And if we go back to the summer and the amount of players we ended up with and the rush and all that kind of stuff, you look now and you go, right, everything's considered, everything's with an eye on the future and how we take the club forward. And if I was a fan, as much as we've got to stay up and we've got to get 50 points, that's really important.
You say it's tapping up, and this is probably my ignorance. How does that differ to what happened with Billy Chadwick?
Billy Chadwick, we wasn't tapping Billy Chadwick up by going behind Gateshead, the club he was playing for, was back to sign him and talk to him. We went to Stockport, who was his parent club, and said, is this something you would consider? So that's slightly different. If we were going to Gateshead, we'd have to approach Gateshead because he's their player playing. So what I'm trying to get at is we never unsettled Billy while he was trying to play for Gateshead. We went to Stockport and said, look, what's your plans with Billy, and is this something you'd consider, because we quite like him. So the dialogue, Billy was getting on with playing for Gateshead while that dialogue, and then you obviously go to the agents and you talk to the agents. So you know, it's important for me that we never have any contact with the actual player, you know, because that's the tapping up part. You discuss with agents, you know, is this something he'd be interested in? Otherwise, we move on to the next target.
So if a player finds out about it, it's because it's been done the official route, and you've gone to the club, to the
club,
agent, and then they have told the player.
Yeah, you know, so it's doing things, trying to do things right.
Okay. Fylde, how much have they changed, if they've changed at all, since you had that really good performance and win at their place a couple of months ago?
Well, they've changed a little bit in personnel, and I wouldn't say they've massively changed in the style. I'm a big fan, and you know, I've said it against the Dorking game. You know, people go, oh, winnable games. We've got Fylde at home, we've got Dorking. I don't see it like that. I think Fylde are strong. They're a very, very quick team. Lots of pace, both fullbacks, wingers, very, very quick. Obviously, we've talked about Horton in the 10 spot. They've mixed things up, but they've got a lot of athleticism. And you know, we had to play a very smart game away from home with the bodies that we had and the personnel we had to put in a very, very efficient performance. There's no two games are the same. You know, so I'm not going to go in and go, right, well, you know, that shape works, so we're going to stick with that shape, that personnel, because it doesn't work like that. So we've got different players now, and we've got to try and come up with a way of winning the game. But I've got loads of respect. They've won their last 2 home games. I mean, Rochdale were a very good team when we played them, and Fylde were far the better team on the day. So they're in a good place.
But they're a side like yourselves that are hoping to get out of the relegation dogfight, aren't they? Do you see it as a 6 point, or is it too early in the season for that?
Again, as far as I'm concerned, we've got 20 games we've got left, or 19? I can't remember what we've got now. I lose track. But we've got 19 games left, and we've got to get at least 20 points.
That seems doable.
It does. I mean, since I've been here, I think we've had 20 games and got 27 points. So we've done okay, but doesn't just mean that it's going to happen, because pressure mounts as you get later on in the season, and the anxiety and the mentality changes. Everyone down there's fighting for their lives. We've got to keep chipping, and if you put the pressure on one game, then everybody's on the floor. If it doesn't go your way, you kind of go, we take on Fylde, we get put in a high level of performance to get something, and then we move on to Oxford, and we've just got to be calculated that way.
Definitely. Thank you.
Hi Neil, speaking of your team news for the Fylde game, then Dan Backey, you previously mentioned you'd put him on like a new sort of rehabilitation course. how is he progressing with that?
Yeah, he's coming on nicely. So the two issues we've got is one, making sure we don't have any setbacks with his knee, and making sure that that continues to strengthen and get stronger and rehab right. And the second one is getting the loads into him now in a steady way. You've got to remember he missed 7-8 weeks. It's like having a summer off and you're almost starting a whole new pre-season with him, and you can rush that, and all of a sudden what happens is you start picking up muscle injuries. So it's not the knee anymore, it becomes a tight hamstring or a calf because you've overloaded him too quick. So we've done that loading process and built his numbers up to the point now where he's on the verge of non-contact training that can slowly dip into contact training. But again, you've got to remember he needs to get match fit, and getting match fit on its own can take 3 to 4 weeks, even once you're training normally with the group, and he's just getting into that point. So, I would like to think if everything went really, really well, at some point midway through February, we could start looking at him as if to feel like we've got his loads up and he might be sort of ready to start considering.
Yeah, and another player who's, I believe, is currently injured, Callum Harriott. How was he recovering from his hamstring injury?
Callum's was a longer one. I think initially it was a grade 2, so it could be anything from 8 to 12 weeks. I think he's 6 weeks into it, but we'll get it rescanned. But when you do a grade 2 compared to a grade 1, it goes from 2 to 4 weeks to 10 to 12. So he's had an unfortunate time. He's obviously been out and missing for long periods of the season.
Yeah, you mentioned that Tuesday night's postponement sort of affected his training plans a little bit. But how much have you been able to utilise these 13-day break from matches in terms of training?
It's difficult because, like I've said on before Tuesday game, some players need a deload. Looking at the numbers, some players need an increase in fitness level. So you have to try and individualise the programme. The hard part, and is to kind of, when you haven't got a game, when you've got a game, the boys build towards a game and everything builds to that game. And when you don't have a game and then you get ready for a game and then you don't have that game, it's kind of, oh God, we're right pumped up for that, and you've got to sort of restart that process again. So that's the point. And sometimes you can have that where the mentality shifts because it's just training and the game's not there. And we've had to try and ramp that back up, ready for Fylde, and make sure that the mentality's right.
I look at AFC Fylde as well, so they've obviously just lost 1-0 to Aveley in the FA Trophy. Are you sort of just ignoring that result, like we're going to do with the Dorking game, because it's in a good competition which they might not care about as much?
Yeah, I mean, you just look at the qualities they've got, and I look at it. I don't look at the league position, I just look at it and go, how are they going to cause us problems? And what players have they got? And I believe they've got a lot of real pace in their team and good players. So, people might go, well, why are they down the bottom then? That's not for me to say why they're down the bottom or not. I just look and go, if we let the game become a certain game, then I think that they'll cause us problems. If we don't, we'll have a better chance. And then we've got to look at how we can hurt them, where we think their weaknesses are. So every team's got different dynamics, and my job and my staff's job is to work through that and make sure when we go on the pitch, the team's as organised with knowing what we're going to do to make sure that they don't hurt us, and what we're going to do to make sure we hurt them. And that's all I can do at the moment with the squad.
Yeah, Chris Beach as well, their manager, obviously got a lot of experience in the EFL with Carlisle United as well. Have you got any past meetings with him or anything?
Well, we played. He'd just taken over when we played him at their place. But I've got a lot of respect for the job he's done, and I've got a lot of respect for all managers, because until anyone's sat in the hot seat and been a manager, they won't know. They couldn't even fathom what being a manager entails. So I know the challenges every manager faces. I think he's got his team right at it, and I believe that they'll have a real good go at lifting themselves out of that bottom, and we've got to make sure that it's not at the expense of us.
Ollie Dyson's exit as well, he was sort of on the brink of the first one. Was this perhaps taken out of your hands with Dyson wanting to actually go and play regular football?
But a bit of both. Obviously I have the final say. No player will dictate to me that they're going, but like I've just said then, that there's got to be an element, there's a human element there, and players desperate to go out and play games, and he's not happy. I've got to look at whether I keep him around, whether I can include him, whether he's going to get in my team, or whether I think it's okay for a month to do that initially, etc., etc. And they're all the decisions I have to weigh up. But with Dice, I like the fact he's desperate to play, and let's wait and see. If Dan Batty comes back, great. If we bring a player in, great. If none of them things happen, we've got the ability to call him back in a few weeks.
Does it help having a good relationship with Scarborough? Because obviously there's been quite a few loans between the two clubs.
Yeah, to be fair, it's any club. I don't think, we have loan players. Location-wise, it helps. Sometimes with players, the location helps for certain players. It fits the logistics of their life. But it's any club, whether up and down the country. It's your relationships with any club. If you're loaning a player out for developmental reasons, they got to be the right club. If it's an Ollie Dyson and he needs to go and get some games and he wants to, then it's got to fit both us and Ollie.
The last sort of thing from me, tonight's coaching CPD event, obviously will be attended by Tony McMahon and Steph Turnbull, the ladies team. Are you hoping, obviously it might not be completely your decision, but in the future for the Yorkshire men's team, the ladies team to collaborate on more things?
Yeah, there should be. I think there should be generally across everything. York's a city. We all want the city to be successful. So I think whether it's us and the ladies team collaborating and sharing ideas, whether it's the Knights, whoever it is, we should all want the teams in York to do well, and we should all make sure that the relationship between the clubs is as good as it can be.
And last bit then, so the CPD event as well tonight, how good an opportunity is that for young coaches looking to get the knowledge of the likes of Tony McMahon or Steph Turnbull? Yeah,
I think they're all good. I've got to revalidate my pro licence in May, and sometimes you learn loads just from the lectures, from the practical. Sometimes you learn loads just by sitting and talking to good educated people around the courses. So these sorts of things, there's always something you'll take from it where you go, I might use that, or I like that, and it might help you further down the line.
Brilliant, thank you very much.
Thank you. And obviously, hoping that this game goes ahead tomorrow, that there's no weather conditions that postpone it, what are you sort of hoping the team are going to put out there?
I think, as always, I hope the team take the work we've done in the build-up to the game and apply it and put in a high level of performance, both with the physical demands of it and the tactical demands. I think what we tried to do is build a team that, if the quality, which it sometimes will be, isn't at its best, that we're a competitive team that are always in games, which wasn't the case earlier in the season. So if we can get both right, the demands, the nitty-gritty side of football and the quality, then we're going to be a hard team to play against.
And talking about the team that you're trying to build, you've obviously left a few players out on loan, and you've gained a few players. Could you tell me a bit about how they're going to fit in with your current team?
Well, the new players, so obviously Billy Chadwick, we feel like we've improved the forward areas. Earlier in the season, Depot was injured, Lenny was suspended when I first arrived, but came in. So there was times when I had one striker available and none on the bench. What we've tried to create now is an element. We've got Cedric back as well, where we've actually got 5 strikers at the club, and there's an element now where you could look and go, I can play 2, I can bring 2 on, I can play all 3, I can have 2 on the bench. What that side of things does is great for me as far as giving me options to change games. So yeah, delighted with that signing.
That's everything from me, to be honest. Thank you.